And we've got some werewolves playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf. But today, we'll be taking a look at the similar One Night Ultimate Supervillains. And when I say similar, it's actually compatible, and you can add the two games together, as well as any other expansions from the One Night Ultimate series. But this time we'll be looking at just One Night Supervillains as a standalone game. So the goal of the game is to determine which player is, in fact, a supervillain. You use tact and discussion and try to determine that at the end of the game. The game's divided into a night phase and a day phase. And during the night phase, the players generally have their eyes shut, and different players do different things as read to you from this cheat sheet, from this cheat sheet, or dictated by the app. I don't have the app to show because I'm recording on my phone, but if you go to this link, you can download the app, and the app basically does the same thing that this cheat sheet does. It just reads what each player does during the night phase. And then at the end of the night phase, you flip your card, or you don't flip your card. At the end of the night phase, you discuss who you think is the supervillain. And when you pick one, he flips his card, and you see if you picked wisely. So let's go over the setup real quick. The setup's real simple. You take the number of players, and then you add 3 to that. So in this sample, there'd be 4 players, and then you add 3. You can pick any cards you want. You can draw them out randomly if you want. You can use the app to pick them. I used the sample first game in the instruction booklet here because I thought that was just a real good sample to use. And then you take these tokens, and for each player, or for each card you pick, you put the tokens. And the order you put the tokens in matters. You put them in the same order they're listed on the cheat sheet, because that is the order they will move. And if you're not using the app to do that for you, you need to know. And that also helps you remember which players are in the game. So, after you've done that, you take the cards and you shuffle them up. Do a quick granny shuffle. And you'll notice, if you've seen my video on One Night Ultimate Werewolf, or if you played it, it's the same background because, like I said, these games are all compatible with each other. And I believe if you have all of the One Night Ultimate games, you can have up to 72 players in a single game. And come on, how awesome would that be? So after the cards are mixed up, you deal. So like I said, this is a 4-player sample. So we put 4 cards down, each player gets one, and then you put the 3 remaining cards in the middle where everyone can also reach them because they might need to touch them. That looks pretty good, don't it? And now, you're ready. So if you have the app, you hit the app button to start, and it'll take it from there. It'll run through all the players you've selected, and it'll just read through the list. If you don't have the app, you have 2 options. You can either pick one player to sit out from the game and read this, or you can pick a player who's in the game. Now, if you pick a player that's in the game, what they'll have to do is keep their eyes shut, and then when it's safe, they open up their eyes and read what the player is supposed to do, and then they shut their eyes. You might need a symbol, some sort of system to make sure nobody can cheat, and that's kind of complicated, but we're not playing that way. So normally you don't flip over the cards, but I'm going to flip these over just so that we know what the players do, or what each player has, because I'll show you a sample game real quick. Okay, sorry about that. I had to stop for a second in a major sneezing fit. It's just that time of year, you know. So at the beginning of the night phase, I believe is where we were before nature intervened. So every player is dealt 1 card, and we have the 3 cards in the middle. The players look at their card and then flip them over. Now, I'm not going to flip them over because I'll forget what is there, and then that'll be even more confusing than it is already. So you get your character, you have the 3 in the middle, you either hit start on the app, or the player chosen to read the cheat sheet will start going. So the game starts. Everybody shuts their eyes. And then you look at the little tokens, and that will tell whoever's reading what to read. Now, this one is a little bit different than One Night Ultimate Werewolf. On the werewolf game, the night starts, the werewolves open their eyes and look around, and that way they can identify if there's other werewolves. In villains, you all shut your eyes, but then the supervillains are all placed on the first block of which characters go, and they keep their eyes open while they move. So, like in this game, there's two supervillains, Dr. Peeker and Henchman number 7. So if both of those two have a card, which in this sample they don't, but if they both had a card, they'd both keep their eyes open and they'd watch each other do their moves. Now, even though they see that, they don't see what they do. So like Dr. Peeker's first ability is to look at another player's card. Well, if Dr. Peeker sees this card, the henchman wouldn't see it. But Dr. Peeker is not in this example because of my random drawing. So, or random shuffling. So we'll not use Dr. Peeker. Okay. He's under here somewhere is what that means. Okay, so let's start the nighttime. So the app will say, shut your eyes. And then it'll say, supervillains, open your eyes. And then it will read the first player that's in the game. You select this when you set up the app. It'll be Dr. Peeker. It will read what he says to do. Dr. Peeker wakes up with the other villains. While awake, he may look at another player's card. And he's not in there, so nothing happens. The next player would be, you look at the token, Henchman number 7. He wakes with the other villains, but that's all he does. So the player playing Henchman number 7 knows that there's no other villains on these 3 cards. He knows that Dr. Peeker is one of those 3 cards. And I'm saying he or she, obviously. The next player we have is the mad scientist. The mad scientist does not open his eyes during the night. Because of something that the mad scientist did, he discovers that he will only win if he gets caught in the end of the game. If he is caught and no villains are caught, the mad scientist wins. So if he's caught and no villains are caught, the villain, he wins and the villain team does not win. If he's caught and a villain is also caught, he wins and the hero team does not win. So that's kind of complicated. And I don't remember if I mentioned this before. I sneezed. After you go through all of these, then the day phase, you discuss what you saw, and every player points to who they think is a villain, and then there's the big reveal. Okay, so Mad Scientist is not in the game either, so we know he's one of those. Nobody else knows that because nobody else had their eyes open, though. Next would be Annoying Lad, and Annoying Lad is there. So Annoying Lad wakes up and must tap the nearest shoulder of either player to the left or the right repeatedly, just enough to be annoying. So if you're over here, you could just go tap, 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 and then shut your eyes again. So that tells this player, hey, I know the Annoying Lad is right over here. So if you're henchman number 7, you know 2 things now. You know that you got an Annoying Lad next to you, and you know that Dr. Peeker is one of those 3 cards. You also know that there's no other villains on the board. Then you would go to the next one, Detector. Detector wakes and may look at either one player's card or 2 of the center cards. So if you're Detector, you could go, you could flip over Roll Receiver and see what's under there and take note, or you could pick up 2 of the middle cards. So she could look at those 2, and then she'd know that there's a villain in the middle. After that, you do Roll Retriever. I have an upside down thing going on today. Roll Retriever is way too much to read. Is he out? He's not even out. So let's just oh well, he's a good one. He's in the middle because he's not in the corner, but he may switch his card with another player's card. The player who switches away Roll Retriever, looks at the new card. He does not do the action of the new card, obviously. Since the other player doesn't know that they've been switched, they still take the action of the card they started the night with, but otherwise they're now their new roll. So let's say this was Roll Retriever, and Roll Retriever wanted to switch with Detector, then you know when they're switched, Roll Retriever knows that he's got Detector. He knows that Roll Retriever is now over there, but the player who had Detector does not know that. So Roll Retriever knows just a little bit. He knows there's not a villain over there, is about it for now. And finally, the switcheroo. Switcheroo wakes and may switch the cards of two players without looking at those cards. A player who receives a new roll is on the team with their new card. Since they don't know they have switched, they still take the action of the card they started the night with, but otherwise they're their new roll. So if switcheroo was out, he could pick any two cards besides himself and switch them. I don't know how that benefits switcheroo, to be honest, but I don't know. And that's it. We don't have the rest of these cards in this game. So then after that's done, it's daytime. The app will say, or the player reading the card will say, players, open your eyes. And now they've got any amount of time they decide on, or just until they're ready, to discuss who they think is the villain. The app defaults to 5 minutes. If you decide in a minute and a half, you can just hit stop and it'll go from there. But whatever you decide, after you're done, every player points. They point to who they think is the villain. And when you discuss, you can say pretty much whatever you want, because you might be lying. But so the henchman does not want anyone to point at him. So he might say something like, well, I was Roll Retriever and I swapped those two, and then whoever was really Roll Retriever might say, no, I was Roll Retriever, and you could fight like that. You can say whatever you want to try to convince people to not point at you. If you're one of the other players who was not a supervillain, you want to figure out who was the supervillain and point at him. So once every decision has been made, everybody has to point. You cannot point at yourself, and you have to point at somebody else. You can't abstain for the vote. And then that's the end of the game. So to decide who wins, I'll show you the instructions. The hero team wins if at least one villain is caught. Even if a player who is not the villain is also caught, as long as one villain is caught, the hero team wins. So on a tie, you might have, you could have these two players both pointing there, or, you could have a tie, and you could have two pointed at Henchman and two pointed at Annoying Lad. Well, the good guys, the heroes, would still win because one villain was caught. Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. After your cards are still hidden, remember? After the voting is done, whichever player has the most points flips their card. So let's say in this example, we did have those two. We had a tie, 2 and 2, let's say. We had 2 pointing at hero and 2 pointing at Annoying Lad. So in that example, the heroes would win because one hero was caught. The hero also wins if no one is a villain and no one is caught. This happens if all villains are in the center. The villain team wins if no villains are caught. Well, okay, so there you go. The mad scientist wins if all other teams... that mad scientist one kind of confuses me. And there's 2 mad scientists in the game. Hey, I should show you that. Yeah, you've got... what do you have? 4 villains, 2 mad scientists, and then the rest are heroes. So there's that. Okay, and the mad scientist, he wins if all other teams lose. The mad scientist wins and all other teams lose if he is caught. The mad scientist loses if he is not caught at the end of the game. If your team does not meet the win conditions above, then your team loses. And then we've got some tips, but that's it. It seems a lot more complicated than it really is. And I played One Night Werewolf more with my kids, but I played this one a couple of times, and we kind of prefer One Night Werewolf. I don't know if that's just, maybe that one's just a little bit easier for the kids. We haven't really tried mixing them up too much. I want to get 1 or 2 more games and then I'll mix them up and do a review on that. But, you know, my initial review on One Night Ultimate Werewolf, I wasn't as happy with it until I played it more. And the more I played it, the more I liked it. And my kids really liked it. We had a lot of fun with it. So I think if you're looking for a short, quick drinking game, this is a good one. As long as you can get everybody to stay honest and keep their eyes closed when they're supposed to, and you got to use the app, it makes it go a lot smoother, then give it a try. It's a pretty cheap game. Pick up really any of them. They must all have slight variants. Like in Ultimate Werewolf, the werewolves don't have a turn. Their only turn is to look around, and that's it. You know, and the villains do have moves in this one. So that's another thing. I need to try it and see how that works together. But that'll be another video for another day. And speaking of other videos, I'll be back soon with another video. So if you'd like to see that, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. And until then, thanks for watching. Enjoy the games.